So today I am trying something new. My friend Anna and I have a lot of phone conversations that go in interesting and strange directions, and we're going to try recording them every now and then and seeing how those go. So today's topic was going to be coronavirus, since I think that she may have it, and also some of the everybody introducing Anna. So Anna, say hi.
Hello. So first of all, I'd like to clarify, because I am going to be that bitchy lawyer. Um, there is a likelihood I have it. It is not a certainty that I have it. It is greater than zero, less than 50%, but certainly and absolutely not 100%.
High enough that I'm
Um,
not going to be in the room with you. Are we, Blackberry? That's right, girl. That's
yes,
right.
yes. Actually, this so
We
felines
social
have
distance
this.
from that lady.
Yeah, felines have the same receptors that humans do, which make them vulnerable to the virus, which is why tigers and cats are going to get the coronavirus. Poor kitties.
My
Some
kitty is
of
not
them.
going to get corona. Blackberry. Hey, make Anna take it back.
Oh, okay, Blackberry. I take it back.
So
Very
we were
nice
having
of
a
you.
conversation on the phone earlier, and I was saying that I think that South Korea's approach was a really good one. What South Korea did was they had every single person wear a mask. None of this, I don't know how people are going to take being told to wear masks. We should lie to them about this, that, or the other. Just everybody wears a mask, because if you're wearing a mask, it helps stop you from transmitting it to other people. Use contact tracing to figure out who may have had it so that you know where to avoid. And then if you did get the virus, they put you away, or you had to go on the side. Whereas our approach was, let's just kind of ignore it until it's terrible, and then tell everybody to stay inside entirely. And then people start trying to argue back against it, and then you have the protests and the conspiracy theorists and the fucktards, because they don't want to stay locked down for 2 months, which is, I mean, that's reasonable. Who the hell does want to stay locked down for 2 months? And we were talking about what it is that makes it possible for it to happen in South Korea versus in America. And I was just talking about New York, where I was saying that in South Korea, in New York, even if masks were available, which they were not, because New York is closer to a third world country than many would like to admit. Help BlackBerry from the virus, says Allison, for $5. Thank you, Allison. That $5 is going straight to BlackBerry and not Anna. But is that
Screw
in New
you.
York? No, in New York, if you tell people, please wear this mask, it's important. It's not going to keep you from getting it. It's going to help others from getting it. They go, well, what the fuck? I'm going to spend $50 on masks and it's not going to help me? Fuck that. I mean, and I think that's a big part of the reasoning behind making people stay home, is that you cannot trust people in New York City to do something if it's not in their immediate fucking self-interest.
So this actually goes into individualistic societies versus communitarian societies. Um, so here's something that's really dark. This is going to be a hot take on the internet. Who would have thought? Um, but during the 1960s, when desegregation was happening in the 50s and 60s, there used to be communal pools in the US. And in Southern America, they used to be they were whites only. Now, when desegregation happened, and as soon as black people started using these pools, instead of just continuing to happily use them along, they filled in these pools with cement and closed them down. This is an actual thing that happened over and over and over again across communities across America. And it was this fracturing of the American psyche or the American social consciousness into multiple parts.
Allison
So,
said for $50 for masks for BlackBerry. So we had an agreement whereby a certain percentage of the money was going to go to Anna for being my co-host here. But given that you specified that goes to BlackBerry, I'm afraid that
oh,
continue.
yeah,
So thank you, Allison.
yeah. Thank you, Allison. That's actually very kind of you. Um, so, because this schism happened in society, it actually created all sorts of effects. So if you poll people about what social programs they support, they will often say, I support X, Y, and Z for people who deserve it. I support food stamps for people who deserve it. But those people, for example, the eponymous welfare queen don't deserve it, which is why I don't support this program, so on and so forth. So you haven't, okay, this may be legitimate or not legitimate. It is up to you how you think about it. It is not my job to make a judgment on that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this atomization happened, and because of that, American society started becoming more and more atomized and more subgroup oriented. Like America isn't a monoculture anymore. It is subcultures which somehow interact with other subcultures, which may or may not have some things in common. So because of that, it's very difficult to have public health related interventions that require communitarian goodwill, right? That require this kind of community effort, like we are all in this together. Because if you think about it, when was the last time that the majority of Americans felt like they were in this together? Like the closest I can think about is 9/11, which was when I was a kid and everything closed down and everyone was freaking out and adults were panicked and they sent us back home and they kept us there for a few days.
I don't even think this is necessarily individualism versus collectivism, or so much as it is individualism.
Communitarianism. I've not called it collectivism. I would call it collectivism. Has a very specific connotation.
Individualism versus the other big word versus individualism versus being a cunt. Because I consider myself to be somewhat individualistic, but I would absolutely purchase a mask and pay for a mask for myself, knowing it won't protect me, simply knowing it will protect the people around me. Not because I'm not an individualist so much as it is because I'm trying to not be a cunt. And I think the problem is that in large cities in the U.S., particularly New York, lots of people are cunts. I mean, you could see it in any of the bike ride videos I do on a daily basis where it's not like somebody's just, oh, whoops, I didn't see anything. Like, they look both ways. They see that I'm coming. They see the light is red for them. And it's like, fuck you. I don't care if I cause a 6-car pileup. This is my road, not yours. And it's just... And in New York City, I don't understand how you can ever mobilize people to work together specifically when so many people are just, they just don't care.
Because it is not instilled in them. So
JP says Allison Esther's best Allison. Okay, so now Blackberry gets 50 and Allison gets 50. That leaves nothing for Anna. Awesome. That's very nice.
You're an amazing audience who hates me.
We have some.
I love it.
We have lovely paid donations and questions already. Where do you see the economy going in the next 3 months with regards to lockdowns and business reopenings? And I'm here until I'll continue listening until she tries to make connection to Trump. I'm gonna disappoint you very much there. I tend to be less critical of Trump than Anna is, but I am quite critical of him here. And let's see. Where do you see the economy going the next 3 months with regards to lockdowns and business reopenings for $10? Anna, how would you answer this?
So I would say that first of all, basically, I have read a few macroeconomic textbooks. I have read papers on macroeconomics. And what I have concluded is that I don't know anything. And economy, as a subject, economists are basically astrologists with math, like with really fancy math. First of all, we have, if you look at the factors, we can't actually do a first principles analysis of the economy because it's not really amenable to that. It's a complex system that very few people understand, which I don't understand, and I'm not sure a computer can understand either. But first of all, asset prices have been out of whack with value for a while, like all these bubbles that have been popping up were due to this constant quantitative easing going on by the Fed for a very long time. Beyond the stimulus package that they gave to, the plebs, a few hundred billion for the plebs, they actually put more than $1 trillion in a separate package, which went directly into shoring up stocks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that from a Schumpeterian perspective, a downturn would be a good thing. It is because asset values are fundamentally out of whack. You have housing that's expensive, stock prices at a PE ratio that make no sense. You have all this kind of cheap and dumb money flooding all parts of the economy. And what that's doing is that for the younger generation, that is our generation, it is flooding us out of the market. You know, if stock prices go down, that's a good thing. That allows us to buy into the markets. If the housing market crashes, that's a good thing. That allows us to create more housing and buy more houses. It allows this generation to participate and get the fruits of economic productivity. And if you keep artificially inflating them in this forever treadmill, in this infinity treadmill of nothingness, you get this nihilistic economy where it exists as a system just because it exists as a system. And I'm saying this with the full understanding that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about or what the crap I'm talking about, because I'm not sure if anyone knows what they're talking about.
I think it's very well. One of the things that happens if housing prices go down is that a lot of like banks are allowed to give out loans to the. Let me rewind. I got distracted by that Erica donation noise. Is that banks are allowed to loan out money based on how much they have in assets, and a lot of most banks, most of their assets is housing. So if the value of housing goes down, that means the value of the assets the bank has goes down, which means they're not able to loan out as much money, which means the pool of capital is going to constrict, which means calling in loans on small businesses and many other businesses, and then this miserable downward spiral. Because for me, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, this is great. I'd love for the housing market to crash. I would like to be able to buy a house that's not a total piece of shit at $900,000. Because, you know, I could save up money for 10 years and not be able to own a house, even in a crappy neighborhood where I live. But the problem there is what happens to the banks that are relying on housing prices being propped up artificially in order to keep the economy going artificially?
See, what you're talking about is two theoretically separate things. You're talking about access to credit.
Allison for additional 50 says, thank you for keeping it real, Lewis. Listen, none of these have said the word Anna in them so far. I'm just saying, but continue. I have to keep teasing her. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it comes with the territory of being a friend.
Straight $20, 20 Australian dollars for Anna. Okay, you can have the Australian dollars. What are those worth?
They're about worth 0.8 to 1.1 of American dollars.
Thank you very much, the Ultra Noob.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say here is that your credit worthiness versus the bank's willingness to give you credit for positive financial activities such as business loans, etc., should be ideally disconnected from housing as a fiscal instrument. The fact that housing is used as a fiscal instrument at all is fundamentally broken, and it needs to be delinked. In the ideal scenario, you would cleave off these parts of the banks. You would separate out the housing loan sections away from the business loans and other consumer and business credit, because housing loans in of themselves are a complicated policy matter. They're not even subject to market forces, for example. You know.
So how would you be allowed to give out as much loan? So let's say you're allowed to have a leverage ratio of 10 to 1, and you have $1 million in assets, you can loan out $10 million in money. Now let's say 700,000 of that is in housing. You take that away, you've gone from being able to lend out $10 million to $3 million, which means calling in $7 million in loans. So if you have a rule system that says you can only loan out an amount of money directly related to your assets and your housing is your assets, how does that work?
See, that's what I'm saying. You want to separate it out.
But how do you do that right now when it's already intertied in? And all those loans are already out there.
That's a problem. That's a big problem. So the way it's currently, that would be amazing. But thank you. I shall create a bank that's actually fucking rational.
Lewis, do you want a 2.4 kilowatt lithium e-bike battery? Yeah, why not? I'll do something with it.
Lewis, don't get killed. Like I tell you this every single time. Please don't get killed.
Did you watch my live stream today on my bike?
No, I was talking to you. Did you do something risky and stupid?
No, I never do anything risky. I just drive like I'm in New York is all.
Which is risky and stupid.
I think
but you see that the stimulus packages actually target these, and they try to buffer them up in the long term, so that there is this much amount of buttressing for those $700,000 in loans, so that they can keep giving out assets and credits, etc. That is what has proven to work for macroeconomic depressions and recessions. Um, but, for example, austerity in Greece didn't work, whereas some kind of quantitative easing actually did work. Quantitative easing might be bad in the long run because it keeps taking away room for economies to actually differentiate between positive growth versus growth that's just happening because of cheap capital. But it seems that as a policy, it does work in such times, which now creates an issue for us. Do you remember when the Feds wanted to increase the interest rates up to help pressure off this bubble,
Mm-hmm.
and Trump forced them and actually went and fought with the Fed on Twitter to
Which is
make
the
them
opposite
not.
of 2013 through 2016 Trump on Twitter. Because 2013 through
Yes.
2016 Trump on Twitter would shit on Obama, and rightfully so, for keeping interest rates artificially low, thereby causing this kind of fake-looking successful economy. And, I was with him
Yes.
with there. I was with that Trump on Twitter. But like
Uh,
2019
see,
Trump on
see
Twitter is
the,
quite
see the
different.
thing is, yes. See, the thing is, the economy is not fake as much. How should I put it? It's a complex system. Again, I'm saying this.
The
I have
economy is
read.
on as much Sudafed as Trump is when he makes the tweets.
Perhaps it is actually. Uh, sorry. Um, the economy is this complex system. By the two complex means something else. Like, first of all, it has depth in it, which is something that we don't understand. So at a fundamental scale, the economy is made of transactions. People buying something from someone else and giving them money as a form of exchanging value. And a fundamental amount of how much the economy or how well the economy is doing is the velocity of money. That is, how many times is $1 changing hands in economy, right? How many transactions are taking place? When the velocity of money goes down, but it seems like the economy is continuously growing, that signals a problem, because that means fewer transactions are happening, but these transactions are concentrating in higher wealth, in either higher wealth or higher end, um, higher net worth individuals, or they're happening at an institutional level where people are actually, where the Fed is pumping in money through the banks, and they just keep purchasing these assets and stuff like that. So, for example, a great example of negative value creation while having a positive economic correlation is stock buybacks. Why the fuck didn't these? Should I be cursing?
Go for it.
Yeah. Why the fuck didn't the airlines invest their money in better staff training, better airplanes, better procedures, perhaps even fucking innovation, so that we don't need to get raped while waiting to get onto a fucking airplane? Perhaps they could innovate on that. No. Instead, this money, they kept the same shitty level of service, and all that money went back into the shareholders, and now they're declaring bankruptcy. I think they should be allowed to fail just because of that. But
I hate how it's called an airline bailout rather than a shareholder bailout.
it is a shareholder
That bothers
bailout.
me incredibly. Because, I mean, if you
Yeah,
call it what... Because the things are very rarely called what they actually are. Allison says 50 USD for the kitty. Why, thank you, Allison. I'll make sure they go straight to BlackBerry's college fund. But so there's a... No, it's a shareholder bailout. It's not the airlines getting bailed out. Because if they filed for Chapter 11, yes, some routes may go away. Yes, But at the end of the day, the airline would still exist. There's going to be restructuring. There are people that are going to lose their jobs. But honestly, what I find really strange is that we're at a time where, for example, a lot of the things that are proposed in the Green New Deal would make airlines less popular. They would not be the only option for sensible travel between certain locations anymore. And maybe this is what you actually need. Like if we're talking about air travel going away or less air travel for less carbon emissions, wouldn't it make sense if airlines cannot exist without being propped up if there's just a couple of weeks of like lower revenue?
Check this out.
Maybe it makes sense to try something else.
check something out. I have sent you the
Let
velocity.
me take a look. But like air travel sucks anyway. I mean, you have to you go to an airport, you have to go through the fucking TSA, which can take you an hour. Then you have to sit down, wait for your flight. You have to then you have to wait 20 minutes to board the plane. Then when you board the plane, it takes 20 to 30 minutes before it leaves. Then once it's up in the air, it shakes and you're next to a bunch of other people. It's miserable. They give you crappy food. You land and you have to wait 20 minutes before you can get off the fucking plane again. You have to wait 20 minutes to get your bag. It's a shit way to travel. Like, why are we still doing this in 2020?
I actually have a friend who has started a company called Cabin. It's Ride Cabin. I can send you his website. It's actually really amazing. So he has made these actuated beds that cancel out the vibrations of the road so that you can actually sleep on the way there.
Let me see this graph that you put up on the screen here and hope that, okay, well, let's see what we have here. Velocity of M2 money stock. M2 money.
Yeah.
What's M2 money for somebody who's an idiot?
So M1, M2, and MZM. M1 is a money supply of currency in circulation. M2 and M2 component includes M1 in addition to saving deposits, certificates of deposit, and money market deposits for individuals. Comparing the velocities of M1 and M2 provides some insight into how quickly the economy is spending and how quickly it is saving. In other words, M2 is the velocity of this money is how many times money is changing hands in both in the more liquid forms, which is notes, shop coins, travelers' checks, demand deposits, checkable deposits, as well as saving and the deposits and certificates of deposit, etc. Right? And it shows the frequency with which economic transactions are happening in the country. Do you see the problem?
So what does this line represent again? I'm sorry if I wasn't fully paying attention there. It's like, what is this line? Like, assume I'm a moron. What does this line mean?
Okay.
Also, someone said sunk cost fallacy with airlines is strong for $5, and I agree.
By the way, I need to really plug in my friend's company.
Also, there's a bunch of people that seem like they want to bang Allison in my chat who have not even confirmed if is this really all it takes? Because I'm just saying here, and I'm not no insults, nothing mean. I'm just saying that I could make a YouTube account, I could Google image search a girl, and I could make my nickname Allison too. You know, like just before you start asking to marry and DM on Instagram random people that you've never met. Like, damn, you are some thirsty fucks. But that aside, there's a reason I'm not showing Anna on the screen. But thank you very much, Allison. Erica and I do appreciate it, especially Blackberry, even though she's sleeping right now and can't show it. And
Blackberry is the sweetest kitty. She deserves a Legally Blonde kind of movie. Legally Blackberry. Where
My
Blackberry goes to law
adorable.
school.
For Allison to pet the Blackberry, JP donated $50. Holy crap. You know, there was this one person that's been watching for 2 years and donating named JP, and then he was able to answer a bunch of questions regarding my merchant services interface that I was never able to answer before, and I figured that was like the JP in his name stood for JP Morgan and Chase until I saw the results of his PPP thing. Hey, look, in Anastream, is this going to be about 5G? No, Jessa. The guy deleted his comment right before Anna could start looking for it. Do you have a screenshot of that comment, Jessa? Because that was something that I wanted to do. Definitely wanted to do. Anna's wanted to do a flat Earth debate for a really long time now. We actually contacted a prolific YouTube flat earther, but we never heard back. But the 5G thing is that's like the flat Earth of 2020. Like flat Earth is so flat Earth is so 2015. Like that. Fuck that. But so what is can you explain this line to someone who's like half asleep at midnight who's an idiot? So what is this?
Okay.
What does this mean?
If you have $1, how many times does this $1 change hands to buy goods and services?
How in the hell could you possibly tell that or measure that?
They actually measure it by the amount of transactions going on in the economy, and they have different kinds of data sampling mechanisms, which I personally don't understand, but I have read in a textbook somewhere.
Okay, so what I'm seeing here is there were more transactions in the 90s, less in the 2000s, and none now?
Almost. We are at 1.4. So a dollar is getting, transacted 1.4. So one of the things about wealth inequality that no one talks about is that it's fundamentally bad for capitalism. From a purely capitalistic perspective, you need a broad consumer base to be buying all those jeans, all those t-shirts, giving all these donations on live streams to people like us, to and all these services.
Wealth inequality is how one person can give $200 to my cat inside of 5 minutes. So let's just.
Well, let me put it this way. How many t-shirts and jeans and salads can one billionaire possibly eat? Like, even if they're extremely expensive, how many could they possibly consume? That is not enough for a sustainable and large economy.
Why did it spike so much in the 90s?
Because during the 90s, there was a lot of... Actually, the 90s were a great period of economic boom due to technology, due to a bunch of... And this was before offshoring really hit. So Americans were actually getting wealthier. And there was one of the largest stock market booms of all time, the .com boom. And after that, we've just never replicated it. That's what bothers me so much. All this quantitative easing and all this stuff, it is going to the richest shareholders and the richest people on earth, which is okay, fine, but it is not a sustainable long-term solution. Because these people are not the ones getting haircuts. They're not the ones checking into hotel rooms. They're not the ones buying.
They would be getting haircuts products if you let the airline fail.
That is true.
We should let the airline fail. For everyone, I make a cheesy joke, but
make billionaires get haircuts again.
I'm very curious to see what happens in the economy after a couple of months. It's definitely going to be a strange reshuffling, and I think that really depends on when we're allowed to open and how we all deal with each other after this. If the economy reopens and every single landlord has their hand out and says, "Give me the full fucking amount for that commercial warehouse or property, even though you aren't open," you're going to see a lot of businesses go out of business or class warfare. But if that doesn't happen, then I think it's just... It's honestly hard. It really is hard to tell.
There's also the infections, right? So here's what I was trying to tell you earlier. If you look at the death rate, and instead it is the death rate is actually a lagging indicator of the true number of infections that there were. So the amount of testing that's happening is just not adequate enough to expose the sheer amount of infections that there were. And we have really good data from places like Italy and China, and on board these aircraft carriers and the Princess, whatever the fuck that cruise ship was, which are like petri dishes to show us that it has a non-trivial lethality rate. It is definitely above 1%, and somewhere between 1% to 2%, and as high as 3.4% when everything's taken in. And if you assume that, based upon the amount of lethality, the death rate we had, then 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had a few million infections, right? And this is an exponential. Now, the exponential is slowing down because we have curbed the amount of people who are close to each other. But if there are enough pockets out there of infection, and you open back up, and these pockets start interacting with non-infected pockets, you will get that spike again. And that is the scary thing right here. Without data, you can't make good decisions. Without
How do you have good data when you don't have testing?
You need testing to do that.
Because the reason I don't believe any of these numbers...
This is fucking crazy. This is so fucking crazy.
The reason I don't believe any of these numbers is because in New York, if I wish to get tested, I can't. If I had $1,000 and wanted to test privately, I can't get a test. So that's why I don't believe the number when they say this is how many people have it. It's like bullshit. And it's also why I think the mortality rate is inflated, because the mortality rate is going to be based on how many people died versus how many people have it. But if you don't know how many people have it because you don't have tests, then that is naturally going to be...
Actually, the mortality rate, the amount of people that we have who have died from it, the number is actually lower than what it should be. Statistically speaking, if what you're talking about is the case fatality rate, that the number of cases who have it versus the number of people who are dying. But the number of people who are dying, that absolute number is actually lower. Because if you notice, there has been a suspicious increase in the amount of deaths from heart attacks, right? There have been a number of deaths. There has been a spike in deaths across New York and New York State and almost every area where these infections have been detected. And
Yeah,
these
spike in heart
deaths,
attacks.
because
Probably April 5th when rent is due. Like, what do you think will happen to business interruption insurance after the pandemic? I think that this is an opportunity for lots of pitchforks to get sharpened, and I think that's the first place a
I
lot of them are
think
going to be pointed.
no, not really. Nothing will happen. They're rich enough. They'll just laugh it off. They have lawyers. They have really good lawyers. They have lawyers who wear $15,000 suits, and those $15,000 suits don't earn
They're going to be red.
themselves. Hmm?
They're going to be red.
They're gonna be fine.
They're
Actually,
going to be very red suits. No, what I'm saying here is that if you cannot test lots of the population, then you have no idea how many people are actually infected. Because the mortality rate
Yes.
right now is based on the number of people that you believe have it based on available testing. And if testing
what
sucks,
you're
then I
talking-
don't believe the number. It's like when they say that 85% of New Yorkers approve of de Blasio. It's like, who the fuck asked me? Nobody asked me.
So what
Really?
you're talking, see, it is really important to be very specific here, because when you say something like, so there are a lot of idiots who are going around and saying, you know what, these number of people they're saying are dead, they aren't actually dead, they're overcounting it, these are fake numbers or whatever. It is
I
very,
believe them.
very,
I believe the
What?
numbers. I believe the death numbers. I don't
Okay,
believe
yeah.
the test numbers because
what
you
you're talking
can't.
about is case fatality ratio. Just talk about the case fatality ratio versus the mortality rate, because people are dumb enough, and there are enough dumb motherfuckers out there that they will actually go and in a fucking pandemic start associating with each other and and hug each other to prove that nothing will happen, like that idiotic fucking preacher who died from COVID was
Now
after posting.
you're describing the type of people in my family, and the thing is that would do shit like that. Like I remember as a kid, always people saying like, yo, you should get Louis. Well, what was it? I'm trying to do a Staten Island Italian accent, and I'm failing because it's late. But like everybody in my family used to lose their mind over the fact that I'd wash my hands before and after I ate. And it's like, what are you doing? What do you think is the point of that? That is like everybody, and then it was just constant back and forth arguing over the fact that I would wash my hands over whether I should see a psychiatrist or I have OCD. And then I see that Italy is the epicenter of deaths in the world, and it's like, wow,
The US
I wonder
is.
how that happened.
It's actually the US now.
I know, sad.
I'm sorry for
Thick Staten Island accent, Washington Post. Yeah, I remember I got featured in some fuckface Washington Post article where they said thick Staten Island accent a long time ago. It was so dumb because I was speaking on the phone and I was doing the impression of what I think a lying lobbyist would say or something like that. And then as I was doing that impression, they like stupidly attached my impression of somebody else to me. But yeah.
It's a funny detail that sells,
Jess
print.
said there are some people in the repair community as well that are buying the 5G COVID bullshit. See, that's the thing. If you said like 5G has the potential for something with cancer or whatever, I would want to see some hard data on it. I really would want to see data, but it's like fine. I'll put that on the table. It'll be on the other side of the table, but it's on the table.
No.
COVID, viruses, 5G. It's like no, no. You're off in crazy land.
First of all, it's non-ionizing radiation. What does that mean? Is that if you have a photon at that level of energy and it strikes an atom, it won't loosen out electron from it. It won't change the charge level of it. Because it is non-ionizing, that means that it can't chemically alter our structure. And trust me, you are surrounded by ionizing radiation all the time. Your body is radioactive. You are actual radioactive material, believe it or not.
5G. BlackBerry, I'm 5G.
We have attained enlightenment. Don't believe in bullshit like that. Just use common sense. If it can't knock an electron, how the hell if it can't change your structure chemically, how the hell can it affect you?
My prediction, which is again, this is the prediction of someone that fixes MacBooks for a living that couldn't pass college or high school chemistry without cheating, is that several months from now we're going to look back on this, realize just how many people had it that didn't even know that they had it, realize that the testing was inadequate, so that way more people have the disease, but we're not even remotely showing symptoms or in need of a hospital care or even a doctor's care, and look back and say, why the hell did we shut everything down?
I fundamentally disagree with you because shutting things down has reduced the rate of deaths. There is fundamental data and evidence right now that says that you have a 2 week timeline. 2 weeks, like clockwork, from the time the shutdown order was given, the rate of hospitalizations has decreased. The rate of death will also decrease according to a 3 to 4 week timeline. So what that means is that it is working, and we aren't in the Italy situation. Italy was perfect. There were people who were dying in hallways, and doctors were having to make decisions of whom to give life-saving care to and whom not to. Will they give it to a father of 2 kids or a mother of 3 kids based upon whether or not the mother might have had breast cancer or not? You
That's
know?
sad.
Yeah.
No, I feel bad for the Italy situation. I really do.
It could have been much worse. It would have been much worse, and it will be much worse. All those states that haven't taken precautions, they will turn into hellholes in 3 weeks from now. In 21 days, you will see horror stories coming out from them. You will see cases where people are dying in hallways because no one has enough resources to intubate
I saw the one video where this one guy's sister was dead inside of his apartment and nobody could even come to collect her.
Yeah.
And she couldn't get it. She couldn't get any help when she went. She couldn't get a test. The guy couldn't get a test. It's a nightmare. It's a horror show.
Yeah. And because of that, this short-term economic damage is terrible. But we were at a point where it had to be done. And my only gripe is that it wasn't done surgically. It wasn't done previously, and it wasn't done before. The Trump administration got warnings in December, in January. And in fact, Trump loves to blame other people. He's now blaming WHO. The WHO declared it as an emergency in January. What did it do in February? What did it do in March? Up until mid-March, when it became a disaster, Alex Azar, specifically the Health and Human Services Secretary, who's in charge of the CDC and all these different organizations, came and said he wants to buy $2 billion worth of masks and respirators for the national stockpile because they think that this is going to happen. And Trump denied that request because he didn't want people to panic. And he cut it down by 75% to $500 million. That is the most short-sighted decision ever made. If they had spent that $2 billion then, if they had created ramped-up testing back then, if they had put in enough resources back then, we wouldn't have had a recession right now. Right? It is,
or at least it would have been better. Because if you had 3 times the money, if he asked for $2 billion and you give him $500 million, then you could have had more masks available for people, or at least told private business, hey, would you be able to ramp up production of masks now before we need it in February and March? Because then you could have had a situation where in New York you could have said, listen, we have masks available for everybody, so I don't want to hear any excuses or bullshit. Everybody wear a mask if you're going out. Everybody wash your hands, but wear this, and then there would be less transmission. Because I still think the way that South Korea seems to be doing it, like the whole concept of everybody wear a mask, clean, wash your hands, wash your face, wash your dick, and if you get sick, go in a quarantine. It's just much more attractive to me than everybody stay home for 2 months. Because I think everybody stay home for 2 months is insanity.
I actually agree with you. And so before this became a thing, I wanted to encourage mask wearing. So I designed up mask patterns to make it more fashionable.
If you do make it, make sure you sell it at $11.99 because $12 would be considered profiting from a pandemic. But $11.99 would be just fine.
There was I actually attended this lecture by a professor called Dr. Kai from Hong Kong, and he was helping with the modeling of the Hong Kong epidemic, and they actually spent millions of dollars ramping up mask production just because they did mathematical modeling and said that if you can catch phlegm and if you can catch it in a critical enough amount of time, then you can reduce the
Anna,
R number. Yeah.
sorry, I don't want to cut you off there, but there's certain things here that
So
I want to
sure.
propose to you. So the devil. In March 11th, the WHO declares coronavirus a pandemic. It was in March. WHO kept saying it wasn't bad and was only animals to humans before that. And
No, so a pandemic is a very specific term. It's a very specific technical term where certain criteria have to be met. What they did was they declared a public health emergency of immediate concern, a
for me, what bothered me
PHEIC.
with the WHO is when they were on that phone call and they say, well, "What do you think of how Taiwan was doing?" And he just pretends he didn't get the question. Like, regardless of anything
They,
before that,
they
it's like,
can't they
fuck
can't
that
they
dude.
can't actually accept that because China is on the WHO and they can't actually say that Taiwan exists.
Fuck that.
Yeah, that's actually something that the U.S. promoted, and that's an American policy. The one country, two system solution. They pretend Taiwan doesn't exist. So, for example, one of my friends, uh, her father was the ambassador to Taiwan, but they can't say he was the ambassador to Taiwan. Do you know what the American embassy in Taiwan is called?
Tell
Without
me.
googling. It is called the American Institute. It is not an embassy. It does everything an embassy does. It is owned by the State Department. It is run by the State Department. It is
Yeah, but
staffed
nobody
by the
knows
State
any of
Department.
this. Nobody cares about that. What happens is when people hear that phone call because it's actually on their TV and they know if you say this is an institute versus an embassy, nobody even knows where any of these things are if you're a normal person. But if you're listening to that phone call and you hear it, that puts it at the forefront of the discussion. Then people who are not aware of politics, foreign policy, China policy, just hear, wait, why the fuck is this guy pretending he didn't hear a question that was clearly asked to him? Fuck that guy. And he's kind of, maybe he's put out there as the scapegoat for a policy that shouldn't
He
exist,
is.
but it's rising public consciousness to the fact that why the fuck are we pretending this country doesn't exist or this city doesn't exist when it clearly does?
Okay, first of all, I have put in the PHEIC, Public Health Emergency of International Concern. I got it wrong. It was not immediate concern, international concern. An extraordinary event which is determined to constitute a public health risk to other states to the international spread of disease and to potentially require a coordinated international response when a situation arises that is serious, sudden, unusual, or unexpected and carries implications for public health beyond the affected state's national border. So for the coronavirus, it was actually declared in January 30th. This was the most serious declaration they could have made at a time, which meant that this was extremely communicable. It was going everywhere.
Taiwan said it
It,
was human to human transmission on December 31st. Then the WHO ignored and repeated the lie that China said there wasn't. Is this true?
wait, no,
Taiwan said there was human to human transmission on December 31st that the WHO ignored, and China repeated the lie that there wasn't.
no. But
Pepper
let
Jack
me
says
just.
Louis Roxman. What?
In Taiwan, human to human transmission WHO. The WHO actually studies all concerns and the facts. Thank God the CDC has my says WHO failed to act. Trump cites
WHO also
Taiwan.
praised China for its transparency while China was arresting doctors for trying to spread the
S-
word of COVID.
Well, so was Donald Trump. That's politics. That's not science. That's that's
Do we
what
praise
they
them for their transparency, though? Was
Trump
it like
did
him going,
actually.
yes,
Trump
Xi Jinping, I'm sure he'll do the right thing. Great guy. I spoke to him. Lovely
no
guy.
no
Looks up to me
Trump
very
actually
much.
said that China was transparent over coronavirus. He said that. I'm guessing China. The reason why the transparency thing was said everywhere was that China made all of the stakeholders say it.
I have to shrink some
China's
of my windows so that I can actually look at things on the internet.
China praises Trump transparency coronavirus. Yes. There we go. Here we go. We have multiple sources for this. True.
Let's take a look here. I have
I
I has Twitter link. Let's see. Is this Trump? Real Donald Trump. It can't possibly be him. No, but it's never the real person when they put the word real next to their name. That's bullshit. I don't
the
believe
United
it.
States greatly appreciates 1 second copy image.
Greatly appreciates their efforts and transparency regarding. It will all work out and well. In particular, on behalf of the American people, I want to thank President Xi.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
See, I am willing to bet see, you have to understand that the WHO, I know WHO scientists, they are amazing at what they do. They go into extremely uncertain situations and they do what needs to be done. And often they're the only people on the ground. WHO and the CDC eliminated smallpox. They have nearly eliminated polio. They have worked in all kinds of conditions across the world. They helped deal with Ebola.
China did an amazing job. Nobody could ever do an amazing job. Nobody could ever do a better job than they did. They did a great job. Fake.
Yeah, it's this language was, I'm guessing, as an international concern. So what happens if the Chinese government throws a shit fit and starts saying we're not going to give WHO supplies, we're not going to sell these supplies to the WHO, we are going to start applying restrictions on WHO workers in China.
This is also a shit thing. Shutdown of Predict Infectious Disease Program challenged by Senators Warren and King. Here's the question that I have here, because I've been looking into this and I can't find exactly how it happened, and I can't who specifically shut down this particular program, USAID Predict, because that got shut down September or October of last year. And here, this is a good New York Times article on it. I never thought I'd hear myself saying that. Scientists were hunting for the next Ebola. Now the U.S. has cut off their funding. Predict, a government research program, sought to identify animal viruses that might infect humans, and now it's gone. That's from October 25th, 2019.
So something more, I would like you to see something more important than that. I would like you to, one of the things that a lot of people are doing is that they look at budgets in terms of top line numbers versus actual line items. So when they say that the CDC budget went up, they're not saying where it went up. Can you please bring this up, link? This is the HHS Budget in Brief 2018. This is the actual FY18 budget for the Centers for Disease Control.
Immunization and respiratory disease.
Minus 82 million.
Minus 82 million is a very slow. Is that they took 82 million off of it, or they were minus 82, like their bank accounts minus 82 in that area?
No, as in you can see 2016 number, 2017 was a decrease, and 2018 was another decrease. So what because coronavirus is that it's a zoonotic disease, right? So if you look at the emerging and zoonotic infectious diseases funds, it was 582 million in 2016. Then became 579, then became 514 million in 2018.
Can you just explain to me the legend of this? Just assume I'm an idiot, because I am. You have numbers that are normal numbers with a plus, and then with a minus. So what is 44? What is 4598 versus plus 161 mean here?
Plus 161 means that the 161 million was added to that particular line item for the budget.
Yeah, so from 20, so what is...
from 2017 in comparison
to okay, I see. That's what the last column is. I'm a fucking moron. Okay,
so this is 2017, 2018, 2018, plus minus 2017.
No, I'm a dumbass. Right? I didn't notice what the last... I thought the last column was 2019. I didn't see that it was the plus minus over 2017. Never mind.
Yes. No, you're not a dumbass. You are...
so let's see.
You're really smart. CDC-wide activities and program support was decreased from $411 million to $105 million. From 2016 to 2018. They got more money. Public health preparedness and response got reduced from $1.4 billion to 1.266. Then you have all these different things. Vaccines for children got increases. Amazing. Good work. You have World Trade Center Health Program got an $18 million increase, which was fought from John Stewart. This is the program where all the people who were there at 9/11, they breathed in a lot of particles from after the attack while going to the wreckage and trying to give first response. and they are now dying from cancer. So this is the fund that deals with that. Um, but it is this interesting bit here. Emerging and zoonotic infectious diseases, you have prevention and public health fund. You have this chronic disease prevention and health promotion. You have environmental health. You have this prevention and public health fund. You have all these different, extremely specific line items, which lead to a net reduce in the capabilities that they have, right? You have to realize that what they do is really expensive.
Is the difference between 514 and 579 million dollars enough to be the difference between a total clusterfuck and a mild clusterfuck?
Yes, because they have large fixed costs, right? So sequencing, all this molecular sequencing, all these labs, all these maintenance, it is really expensive. What they ended up having to do is that they would have these global rapid response teams, for example, which was formed after the Ebola pandemic. These global rapid response teams were scientists and doctors who would be sent immediately within 24 hours of an outbreak into a location where they would start swabbing people and getting genetic data. And then they would start trying out and experimenting treatments over there and give assistance in the field. So first of all, this team was never deployed for the coronavirus. As far as I can tell, and I have searched a lot, Trump never deployed the CDC rapid response units.
Taurus says Ben Shapiro said Trump praised China due to their large amount of medical supplies and wanting to keep relations good makes sense to me.
Same way, that's why WHO did it as well. Why do you?
But was it
WHO
praising? So I think this is different. People are seeing a difference between praising a leader versus pretending a country doesn't exist. And I think what I'm pointing to,
it's the same policy.
It doesn't matter if it's the same policy because now it's actually being put in front of a lot of people that weren't even aware. Because you have people that didn't even understand what that was, or they maybe mildly know that, China has aggravations with other parts of the world, but it wasn't really put in front of them in that same way. It's like hearing rumors that someone was not nice to their wife, then you go downstairs to get your mail and you see right in the vestibule of the apartment building that he's beating the shit out of her, that kind of thing. It's like when you viscerally see it in front of you, that's what I think is getting to a lot of people with the WHO, because they never saw it in action.
Yeah, wait until they hear about the South China Sea Islands and the artificial islands China is building there, as well as the fact that we nearly went into World War III during the Bush and as well as Obama administrations, because China would not back off from there, as well as the fact that China has actually invaded multiple countries around it, and that they are carrying out ethnic cleansing in several parts of the country. China is.
We really need to find a new 3D printer.
China is dark as hell, and it's really messed up.
But it's a cheap 3D printer.
Yeah, and in a way, it's what has stopped China from turning into imperialistic Japan. Because China has economic relations with the rest of the world, China is less likely to act out the way imperialistic Japan did.
They have an interesting take on imperialism, it seems now. Like they don't in the beginning it was we're just going to take you over and take all your shit. Then it became, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that there's a democracy and pretend that this person is your democratically elected leader that gets along with our country. And what China's doing is very interesting. It's, trying to build roads, infrastructure, helping countries in the helping countries in the Middle East build up their infrastructure to have a relationship with them back and forth. Seems like a very interesting way of playing empire.
It's actually what the U.S. pioneered. The State Department pioneered this, and it's what the State Department does really well. What do you think?
Did someone say 3D printer says Kopaz? No, Kopaz, no. Patio for $5 says, thanks for the content and fighting the good fight. Be safe and well. I'm really curious how things would have played out if this agency was not cut. But my question to you is, regarding this cutting of funding or cutting Predict, is there any way to specifically find out who was responsible for that? Was it a decision from one person or from multiple people? Who had to okay something like that? Because this is literally
you would have to go through the budget reconciliation process. First of all, technically the Congress has power of the purse. But the way it works is that the president proposes a budget for a year to Congress, and then Congress makes line item changes and then goes back and forth until they agree on something, because the president at the end of the day is the one who will sign the budget into law. And then they agree on something, and then it goes through the process. It goes through the House, and then goes to the Senate, and then goes to the president's desk, who then signs it, and then it becomes a budget. It is a really complicated process, and somewhere in there. So initially, there were deeper cuts made to the CTC. We know that for sure. There were deep cuts made to CDC that have been proposed repeatedly by Trump again and again, including after the coronavirus pandemic happened. They actually kept proposing cuts again and again. And we know that these line item cuts happened somewhere in negotiation between the White House and Congress, because they decided that they could not cut this and this. So instead, they would rather have cut these line items and put money into these items instead, to do that. And it was a compromise. It's how politics is done. It's how sausage gets made. Someone goes into a locked room with them, and they hash it out, and then they decide they're going to put this much money here, they're going to put that much money there. And someone made this compromise, and the White House accepted this compromise, and this is where we are. Putting a blame on just one thing is never productive, because as in that recorded podcast that hasn't come out yet, as I said, a disaster is never one thing that goes wrong. It is a series of events and a series of points at which something could have been done, but wasn't done, and some things went wrong. It's never just one cause, right? I remember this from the aircraft investigation series by National Geographic from when I was a little girl. They would give examples of, this bolt is technically what caused it, but this bolt would not have fractured if the maintenance person hadn't neglected checking it, if the maintenance person hadn't actually done the job. But even that would not have caused the accident. This wouldn't have happened if the pilot hadn't been rough on the stick. The pilot wouldn't have been rough on the stick if this instrumentation thing hadn't been different. This bolt wouldn't have. This bolt is actually a design flaw in the airplane, and this should have been taken care of, blah 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 blah, in this part of the design process. So it's never one thing that goes wrong, but it's a series of events that trigger one another until you get a disaster. Disaster is never ever is attributable to one cause. It is not just that these programs were cut and so we were flying blind. We were flying blind, and then on top of that, warnings were ignored. On top of that, they tried to make nice. They tried to make it seem like things were normal when they weren't. On top of that, you had people who didn't want to change their minds when presented with evidence to the contrary. On top of that, you had people who forgot how to do a basic checklist, because there are checklists for this out there. There are procedures that have been developed since the Bush administration, since the 1960s, that have been constantly updated for exactly this scenario. And no one executed those procedures. Why? I don't know. But someone didn't.
It's such a fail that in New York City, Jessa was saying that so many colleges have the labs required to do coronavirus testing. There's so many ways to deploy coronavirus testing here, and that all of that is just sitting closed. And that kind of makes me sad.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Lazy Git, for the $10 Australian.
Thank you so much. This is what a strong executive is about. It is about the president or that person who says, we need to mobilize these resources in the government and in our academic labs everywhere to get this and this and this and this and this done, right? It is that institutional knowledge. It's about knowing that which scientists are where, who can do the work, who can't do the work. My cat wants some love. Oh, baby.
Your cat is not getting any attention.
She loves me. She just woke up and she's like, I'm needy. Come here, sweetheart. Come here. Come here. Can you see her? Come here.
I don't see a kitty. Oh, I hear her. That kitty is a mad kitty.
Come on. She's a beautiful kitty. She's a feline supermodel, and she's just as moody as human supermodels.
Low-key
Can you see her?
tired of this person praising the World Health Organization. Trump derangement syndrome, someone says. I don't know. I mean, you could always bring up an opposing point if you'd like, but that stuff is kind of annoying victimish stuff.
Yeah, the point isn't that no one is perfect. These are real organizations in the real world. And again, a disaster is never down to one thing that happened or one thing that went wrong. We cannot just, for example, blame Trump for this. He has his share of the blame as a poor executive, but it is also the local Communist Party of China, the CCP, who decided to censor and censor the doctor who first came out with oh baby, lovely. Can you see her?
Yes.
Yeah.
Biden was screaming racism when he stopped flights from China. A lot of people were, but that's the thing. The whole point of stopping flights from China was to buy some time. And what did you do with that time? And that's what the criticism is. It's like you had this time to do something. Did you use that time to stockpile en masse? Did you use that time to coordinate with governors to try and figure out some sort of plan? Did you use that time to create a unified message for what it is the public should do so that it doesn't get as bad? Did you use that time to prep hospitals? Like what happened with that time? And
Did you remember the emails I sent you from the scientists? This
Yes.
is from January 28th. Can you
Yeah.
bring them up?
one second, I have to find where they. Is that they do Signal Hangouts?
Yeah, I put it in Signal. I'm gonna actually put it here.
One second.
Um,
Let me find. Like, oh, I'm sleepy.
I can actually paste them in fresh if it helps. Will that help?
1 second. If you re-put it in Signal, that makes life easier.
Okay, I'll do that. I have sent the first one through.
YouTube chat is the only place where I can get called a right-wing Nazi Trump supporter and TDS within 2 days. I think it's awesome. You have no, like when I did the video regarding the tariffs where I was saying that the Trump's tariff policy allows a company like Amazon to apply for an exemption but disallows anybody to file afterwards, which was kind of weird. I got all sorts of shit for it. And then when he had said one thing and I said, I don't really find that to be that offensive, I had like 90 comments all calling me a Nazi piece of shit. It's a lovely platform. It's like you can't just have an opinion or be a person on here. It's one team or the other. It's so annoying. All right. Did you signal me the link?
Yes. I sent you photos.
Okay, here we go.
Give me a second. I need to.
Do you have like links to this? Because I have to change OBS to show Signal, and I have to crop out the other people in my contacts list. And that is there a link that has all of these somewhere?
Yes.
I know. I'm being a boomer.
Yes.
I'm being a total noob. But if I wait to have time to do this properly, then I will never do it at all.
Give me a second. Give me a second. I have
Let's see.
more bladder.
China is giving false and misleading propaganda. No. You mean when my vendors say in Skype that their products is top quality and they send me a chip that's fake that they scribbled or laser engraved the serial number onto to make it look real, that they're lying to me? Are you telling me that this may be some sort of something coming from above? That may be no way. Lewis is a millennial boomer, says JP. I'm being a total boomer. If that surprises you, you need to check Twitter. I actually deleted my Twitter. In anticipation of that, I deleted my Twitter and my Instagram a long time ago. It makes me...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, 1 second. I'm going to bring up the link. So from Carter Mecher or Mecker? Is he like an Armored Core 2 bot or Mech? The chatter on the blogs is that the WHO and CDC are behind the curve. I'm seeing comments from people asking why World Health Organization and CDC seem to be downplaying this. I'm certainly no public health expert, just a doofus from the VA, but no matter how I look at this, it looks to be bad. If we assume the same case assessment rate as the spring wave of 2009 H1N1, this looks nearly as transmissible as flu, but with a longer incubation period and greater RO.
Are not.
Ro?
Are not. It's are not.
R
Are
not?
not. Yes. R not is the number of times if one person has the virus, how many people can they give it to?
Oh, okay. I should have paid attention in math in high school. The projected size of the outbreak already seems hard to believe. All right, what else do we got here? NPIs are going to be central to our response to this outbreak. Absolutely. I agree. Well, we all need NPIs. I know what's an NPI. But, assuming our estimates of severity prove accurate.
NPI is actually a non-pharmaceutical intervention like closing schools and businesses.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Absolutely. I knew that. I had the best education. This email group has grown since we began. Not quite epidemic level growth, but getting there. Looking ahead, I anticipate we might encounter pushback over the implementation of NPIs and would expect similar concerns or arguments as were raised back in 2006 when the strategy first emerged. Let's see what else we have here. Dr. Ava K. Lee. Diamond Princess shows case the worst form of social gathering. Diamond Princess shows case? Huh?
Diamond Prince. Do you remember the cruise ship people were stuck on?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't matter even though it seems the environment is unnatural. Why would it be so different than a mall with everyone walking around for 3 to 6 hours, eating, drinking, touching everything? Or at school encloses in classrooms for multiple hours. This is terrible English. Or at work enclosed, mofo, enclosed. Or at work enclosed in cubicles for 8 hours long. Because I thought my brain was misreading that, but it's not. My brain is just simply not decoding English to English fast enough.
This is Dr. Talk.
Okay.
This is our doctor's email.
James V. Lawler. Great understatements in history. Napoleon's retreat from Moscow, just a little stroll gone bad. Pompeii, a bit of a dust storm. Hiroshima, a bad summer heat wave. And Wuhan, just a bad flu season. Millennial boomer, the hipster's ultimate form. Okay, what's next? Which link am I on here? Oh, I already clicked that one. Okay, let's see, there's another one. What has me worried is what happened on the cruise ship is a preview of what will happen when this virus makes its way to the U.S. healthcare system, not to mention institutionalized high-risk populations in the U.S. like nursing homes. I'm not sure that folks understand what is just over the horizon. Remember the story about Man Gulch? We are at the equivalent about 544. I anticipate that when we reach 545, there's going to be chaos and panic to get anything in place. I doubt that what we would then hurriedly put in place will be any better than what they did in the cruise ship. As a consequence, would expect much of the same results. Yeah, so what keeps coming up in the chat is instead of placing blame on the past and blah, 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 what would you actually do about it? So what I would do about it now, as a MacBook logic board repairman with no experience in the medical field who failed science repeatedly, is I would figure out a way to get everybody to wear a fucking mask. Like, have a conversation with people and say, listen, we fucked up colossally. Everybody in here fucked up colossally. Please listen to us now. I know you have no reason to trust us. Here's what we need you to do. We need you to wear a mask. Not because it's going to help you. It's not going to help you, but it's going to help you from spreading it to somebody else. And we don't have the resources to test, to even get you to figure out if you have it or not. But the thing is, if you don't listen to the rule, then other people are not going to listen. And if they don't listen, they're going to be able to spread it to you. So if everybody wears a mask, can we get people who are young to be able to go outside and still wash your hands, try to stay away from people if you can, try to be a little bit more distant, assume that people are sick, but can we get people to wear a mask and go out? And if you are 60, 70, 80, stay home and watch The Honeymooners, which you're probably going to be doing anyway. Just don't show up to work until we have some sort of cure or vaccine or something else. And if you're that old, you're more likely to be retired than the young people anyway. And people go
I would
on.
modify this advice. I would say that if you are in a high risk category, if you're immunocompromised, if you are if you have asthma,
Yeah,
if
old.
you have no, like
Okay,
young people
have
as well.
old
Like
mean if you're immunocompromised, have a problem, disability, whatever, like
no,
all that stuff.
asthma is statistically very common, especially due to pollution, etc. If you're immunocompromised, that can be due to genetic conditions. That can be because you got HIV. That can be because of a lot of different conditions. If you are any of these conditions, you should stay in. You should not interact with other people. People who are interacting with people who are in this category should also work remotely.
Anna's
You know,
adding 10 IQ points to my response. That's being generous to me. 30. Okay, you added 30 IQ points to what I said, but it sounds like the same general principle. But that's what
yes.
I would do. I wouldn't say like, people who are saying we may have to be shut down for the next 6 months or 8 months. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. That's
The US should make okay, so this is one of my favorite inspirational things that I tell myself when I get depressed. um, at the start of World War II, um, FDR went up and said that before the end of the World War, they were going to create an air force with 30,000 airplanes, and everyone laughed at him because the US had more than less than 1,000, less than 100 usable airplanes. But by the end of the war, they didn't just make 30,000 airplanes, they made more than 100,000 airplanes. The US was producing an airplane every other hour. They made an armada to block out the sun. They made one of the largest fleets of airplanes at any time, and they made airplanes that were so amazing, so reliable that we are still using them today. There are airplanes made in World War II, the B-52s, that grandparents, the grandfather, the father, and the son have all served on them. And they did it in the span of months. And it was a shit show at first, but they managed to get it done. They kept at it and they kept doing it. What I would do is that I would create a national program that, first of all, loosens the regulations around human testing for vaccines. Based upon patient consent, I would start mass testing different vaccine variants and start isolating these people and start seeing what happens. Second, I would essentially create a massive program to make and distribute as many masks and ventilators as possible. Make an armada that blocks out the sun, you know?
that's
And
not
I would
even the
keep
hard
moving.
part. It's getting people in these cities to actually wear them and use them.
That's where I would use social shaming. That's where I would use celebrities. That's where I would use all that persuasive power. So, for
That
example,
backfires though. That creates countercultures.
well, you just keep doing it and keep
You'd have to
shaming them.
figure out a way to have it done by both sides, every side of the aisle.
Yeah, which is why you keep getting the big players to buy into it and just keep pushing it. Um, it is not an easy solution. It just
Social shaming.
has.
Someone said social shaming. Fuck that. But I mean, social shaming works for a lot of different things. I mean, if you see someone
Yeah,
punch their kid in the face in the street and there's no cop around, social shaming is, you know, okay, that's probably a
works.
bad example. But like,
Tried it with cigarettes.
civic duty is better than shame. Okay,
I mean,
you're assuming too much of people in New York City.
that's positive motivation versus the negative one. The ideal scenario would have positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement for certain, let's just say, maladjusted individuals. So, for example, there's also what to do if you get it. So, can I? Do you want to ask me about what happened if when I figured out I might have it?
I'm
There
about to
is a
fall asleep
probable.
and I gotta be up in 7 hours, so I gotta cut this
Okay.
short soon.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what I did when I figured out?
What? How fast can you say it? Because I gotta go.
5 minutes.
No, no.
Okay,
I got
fine.
to go. Next.
We'll do it tomorrow.
It's 1
The day
a.m.
after.
I'll see you later. See you later, Anna.
Talk to you later.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Tired of WHO. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of the WHO. But I get the point of like when they said with the one China thing when she says that they're not the only ones. That they're not the only ones that have that. I still think it's one of those things where a lot of people like they may know what the one China policy is in the back of their mind, but then when they see it brought up so viscerally, and it's like, huh, that's someone that sounds like me, and they seem like they're afraid to acknowledge something. Damn, is that what that was? Fuck that. And I think that's the point where that whole one China policy thing is coming to, the collective consciousness of the average American when they hear that, and they just say, fuck that shit. Yeah, I don't know. Some of this stuff makes me sad. Like, what was the thing I was looking at before this? It went away. Like this over here. Like when someone says you have Trump derangement syndrome for criticizing him for this going away on his watch. It's like, man, I criticized Obama for so much shit. Is it like, it would kind of be unfair for me to say this happened under this person's presidency, so it's bad. But when it happens to this person's presidency, it's not bad. Like, now what I say here is I have no idea what would have happened if this was still around, because this entire program got cut off and entirely cut off October of last year and was slowly kind of decommissioned the year before that. But what I do say is that if you take a look at the amount of taxpayers in America, let's just see, like how many taxpayers in America? Actually, I've already searched for this. Let's see, 143.3 million taxpayers. All right. And this program is, I think, 23 or 220 million a year. Let's just say 23 million to be generous. I can't even put my commas here. 143, 300. Okay, it's the other way. Man, I suck at math. So that's 16. Let's just round it up to 17 cents an American. I don't know. I kind of would have been willing to pay 17 cents a year to see what it would have been like if that program was still around. I would, as a libertarian, as someone who says fuck the government, I would have 17 cents. I'll throw that in to see how it is. That's the thing. We don't know why it was cut off. Was it thought to be redundant, so they added funding to another organization? There's no other organization that does that. What Predict does, if you read about it, is very, very particular. We have people in all these other countries, and when there's some sort of epidemic outburst, what they do is they give them resources and help them out. B, they teach them how to deal with it. But C, very important, they report back to us. So let's say China's government was saying, oh, this isn't much of a big deal. Yeah, it doesn't transfer to humans. If we had Predict people from that department in China, they would have phoned home and said, hey, motherfucker, they're lying. Get the masks ready. Get the ventilators ready. They're lying to you. And they weren't there because they were gone. And, 17 cents a year. You could sell me on that as a libertarian. As a libertarian who despises the government in the United States and thinks that it is grossly incompetent. You could have gotten 17 cents a year from me for that. And there's so many fucking pieces of waste in the government. I don't think that's really where you need to save 17 cents a taxpayer. But it is what it is. You weren't saying you had TDS. I saw all sorts of people typing that. I'd pay an entire quarter, someone said. Doesn't the WHO do the same as Predict or the CDC? They don't do the same as Predict, and they also don't have the same laboratories available to them that Predict had. There was also another interesting article where they were saying that authorities in many of these countries treated Predict differently than they treated the CDC and differently than they treated other departments, because it wasn't like they were dealing with a bureaucrat. They were dealing directly with someone who was like they didn't really have any sort of foreign policy goals involved. They just wanted to help with whatever it was in the front lines. It's kind of like if I'm working at an Apple store, like God forbid I was fucking working at an Apple store and I was dealing with a customer. You know that I'm not going to help them according to the way the manual tells them to help them. It was kind of the relationship that was described from medical authorities in these countries and predict was very differently. And there's another article, I forget where it's, I think it was LA Times or something like that. LA Times, not New York Times, where there was one person talking about how the predict people were able to get certain things done in countries because they had a level of trust and boots on the ground that the others didn't. Who was this caller? What was her name? Her name was Anna. %6 is pulling a number out of your ass. Huh? I never said 6%. Oh. Twitch chat is just being dumb. Here, mute Twitch chat. Let's see. Alright. I want to sleep, so I'll see you all later. I'm tired. So tired. But yeah, I was reading where people were saying, you know, we should be locked down for the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months, and it's like, nope, fuck that. Now, okay, as Anna said, not just old people, but people who are immunocompromised, high risk, blah, 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 blah. Have all of them stay home, work from home, quarantine yourself. Let people who are healthy and not in a high risk category wear masks, do whatever the fuck you need to do to get people to wear masks. I personally think the best way to do it is get down on one knee and say, we fucked up. I understand, American public, you have no reason to trust any of us cocksucking cunts. I'm sorry. I'm resigning. I'm donating my salary for the last 5 years in public office to charity. I have fucked up terribly, and once this is over, we will get me kicked out. The one thing I would ask of you right now, if anything, can you wear masks, wash your hands, wash your face. Don't lower your mask when you go to talk to somebody because you're afraid they can't understand you. Don't care if it looks rude. Talk through the fucking mask. Talk louder. Deal with it and live your life. Live your life in a more OCD way. You know, wash your hands, stay away from people, but we're not doing this thing where we're just going to stay prisoners in our houses for the next 6 months while our minds rot and the economy goes to shit. Because it's not just the economy. It's not the people. It's not just money. It's all the things that we're not making that we would be making if we were going about our respective businesses. And it's also the losing your mind element from just staying inside all day and not doing anything, not building anything, not creating anything. It's like, yeah. I don't know. If you say that, people think that you're just a piece of shit that wants people to die. You want people to die! It infects through eye. Wear goggles. Goggles too. That's face shields. Goggles. And yell. Definitely yell. I have customers walk in and they'll do this to talk to me. It's like, no. Stop that. Put your mask on and talk louder. Raise your voice. If I can do it, so can you. No, just like raise your voice. I'm not going to be mad at you. I'll be mad at you if you fucking get me sick and I die. I won't be mad at you if you keep your mask on and talk louder. All right. Talk to you later. See you all in the next video. It's 1:19. I've been a terrible boyfriend. I got to wake up soon to work. Huh? No, thank you. I don't deserve a cookie. I did podcast instead of spend time with Erica. I go to hell.